Hey guys, welcome to Cubing with Jagger. Today I'm going to be going over my cube collection. This is going to be the Corona 2020 Summer Cube Collection. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do get Corona, that is very bad. Make sure to stay inside and all that good stuff, but at least you'll have a long video to watch by me, and you can know all of the cubes we have here. So before I get into this video, I just want to say that you guys should definitely watch to the end. I have a very special announcement, and I think it's going to be really cool, so make sure to stick around to the end to see that. Anyway, let's get right into the video. But before we get into that, I just wanted to mention that 82.5% of you guys aren't subscribed to the channel, and I would really appreciate it if you did. It would help us get to 100 subscribers, and you could join these 15.4% of people who are already subscribed and watching these videos as well. And I would really appreciate it because I have a very special video planned at 100 subscribers, which I really think you'll enjoy. Anyway, let's get right back into the video. So I'm going to be starting off with the most difficult puzzle I own, which is of course the 1x1, and I really like this puzzle because it's so hard to solve, yet it is maybe possible. No one's quite figured out a solution yet, but I think we can do it soon. But anyway, jokes aside, this is just a fun little puzzle to own. It's really pretty pointless. It's kind of like just a dice that was more expensive, but it's really fun. I like to play with it occasionally, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Next up, we're going to be going over my backup 2x2 main, which is the Yushin Little Magic M, and I really like this cube actually. It was kind of hard for me to decide if I wanted it to be my real main or not, but I just decided to go with the GAN 249 V2M, which is coming up next. So yeah, this puzzle is quite good though, and I really do like to solve it. And it is a really nice puzzle to have, and I'm glad it's in the collection. Next up is the GAN 249 V2M, and this is a pretty good cube. I really like it. The little size difference from the previous one to this one is like 2 millimeters, which isn't a whole lot, but it is a little bit noticeable. But I do definitely like this puzzle a lot, and it is very fun to solve. My record is 0.81 seconds. It was super lucky. And yeah, so that is the GAN 249 V2M. On to my 3x3 backup main next. This is the new RS3M 2020 edition from Moyu. And I really like this cube because it is fast and also quite controllable. So it makes doing solves a lot of fun and very enjoyable. And yeah, so this cube was only like $9 or something on the Cubicle, so that is a really good deal, and I definitely would recommend this cube if you're short on money, or you just want a pretty decent cube for a cheap price. But yeah, that is the RS3M 2020 from Moyu. Next up onto my main speed cube, this is the Yushin Little Magic M set up by Cubicle Labs. I've done so many solves on this recently. I've done about 600 in the last few days, so that is a really awesome thing. My times have been getting a lot better. I think in my first cube collection I said I had maybe gone from like 33 to like something a little lower, maybe like 20 or something, maybe 25. And yeah, so now I'm averaging probably about 18, 17, somewhere in there. So that is really awesome. My PB is 7.73, which was super lucky. Unfortunately, it wasn't on camera, but it was an awesome solve, and I am very proud of it. But yeah, so this cube turns really good. It was only $20, and that is an awesome deal for such an awesome cube. So yeah, that is my main speed cube. Next up, on to my 4x4 main. This is the Aosu WRM from Moyu. And this is the Mystic setup, and I really like it. It's helped me drop my times by a whole lot, like probably maybe like a fifth of the time, which is just super awesome. And I really like this cube because it's a nice small size, but it's still very good. And I can do slice layers really nicely. And it's just all around a really nice cube, though a little on the spendy side, but I do think it was worth it. Next up is my 5x5 main, the YJ Yushuang V2M, and I haven't been doing a whole lot of 5x5 recently because I've been focusing on 3x3 and 4x4, so that is a little bit disappointing, but I do really like this cube still. It is pretty good and quite cheap. So I do think I might get back into doing some 5x5 if my times for 3x3 and 4x4 improvement slow down, so I can get better at this. But yeah, it's a really nice cube, and I do like to solve it, though it does take a little bit longer than I would like, which is why I stick to 3x3 and 4x4 for the most part. And next up we have my 6x6 main, which is the YJ Yushi V2M 6x6, and this one was actually set up by Speed Cube Shop. And I don't solve this puzzle a whole lot because I'm just not that good at 6x6. I should really actually try to get a little bit better so then I can do it more and it can be more enjoyable. But I do like this cube a lot, and it is quite fun to turn, and it is made very, very nicely by Speed Cube Shop, so I definitely think it was worth it, and it is a really, really nice cube. And yeah, so that is my 6x6 main. Next on to my 7x7 main. This is the Yushin Little Magic M, and this is a really, really nice 7x7. It's so much better than my stickered Mofang Jiaoshi one. And I really, really like this cube. It's helped me drop my times by like a few minutes, which is awesome, especially for 7x7. And I really don't solve it a whole lot because I've been, again, focusing on the smaller events. But I do really, really like this cube, and it was definitely a good purchase, and I would definitely recommend getting it if you want a nice 7x7. Next up, we have my friend's Rubik's 2x2 that he keeps on forgetting at my house. Come on, August, you need to get your cube finally. Now, this is just a really bad cube, and it's not even mine, so I checkered it and put it on my shelf, and that's about it. It's really small, really bad, can't corner cut, and that's about it. Next up, on to my Mofang Jiaoshi 2x2. Now, this was actually not my first 2x2. I broke it or sold it or something like that, so I had to get a replacement. I think I might have broken it or something. But anyway, it is a pretty nice beginner 2x2, and it is not very expensive, and so it's a pretty nice 2x2, but I definitely do like the magnetic feeling of my main and backup main. But it is a nice 2x2 to start, but I unfortunately don't use it all that much since I have better hardware. Now, funny thing about this cube, which you may notice again, is a GAN V2 49mm M, and it is like the same thing, but you can maybe hear that kind of scratchy sound in the back. And that's because these two layers, when I got it, were like stuck apart like this. So if you want to do a turn, it was pretty much like doing that while squeezing it. So I had to like rip it apart, and thankfully I had it on video so I could show the cubicle and they could get that sorted for me. So I got a replacement one, but this is just my old one, and yeah, it turns pretty much the same, but it's just that really, really annoying thing here. I'll put that video in the corner if you want to look at it. But yeah, so really, really, really nice cube if it weren't for this stuck together corners. Now we are on to my first ever 3x3. This is the Rubik's 3x3. It is pretty bad, but it's okay because it's my first ever cube, so I don't really mind that it's all that bad. I never really use it, but it is cool to have, and I will make sure to always keep this around because it is pretty special to me, because it's one of the things that got me into cubing. So it like can't corner cut hardly, like right there. Any old cube pretty much these days could do it, but this cube cannot, but I am still glad to have it in the collection. Next up, my favorite cube in my collection, the absolutely worthless letters and numbers cube. It is like so bad. Like you can see right here, like this is hollow. And if you know anything about cubing, you should know that that is not supposed to be a good thing. And it's like basically in like 2011 where you'd have like V cubes and stuff. So if you couldn't turn this way, you just turn the other way. And it's just so bad. I think my mom got it from some random place. I don't even know. I just never want to use it again. So I'll put it back on the shelf to be used again in the next cube collection, probably. Next up, we have my first decent 3x3. And this is the Meilong 3x3 or Mofang Jiaoshi 3x3, something like that. but it is pretty decent, I guess. Like, I messed with the tensions a bunch and like took it apart and put it back together and got a bunch of junk in the mechanism and stuff, so it turns pretty slow and not that great. It's really loose and it's just a bad cube in general right now. I think they're even better out of the box than this, so that is the Mofang Jiaoshi 3x3, my first ever speed cube, and I was so excited to get this in a pack of 2x2 through 5x5, and I thought it was so good, but now that I have my Yushin Little Magic, it's so much better than this cube. But I am still glad that it is my first speed cube. Next up, we have my first magnetic speed cube, and this is the Baeyong M from Amazon. And so I think this is actually more of a Shangshou Mr. M that is just off-brand, and it's a little bit worse, I think. They might have changed some random things with the design. Pretty much a knockoff, but it was my first ever speed cube that was magnetic. It's got primary internals, as you can see. It's like a pretty okay cube, but it's just definitely not up to what I am using now. So it is an alright speed cube, but not one that I often use. Next up, we have the Qi MS 3x3, which I unboxed recently in another one of my videos, which is going to be, again, right in the corner. And this cube is, like, too fast by a lot. Like, that was like a 3U flick, and you just don't need that in a cube, honestly. Like, you don't need such speed, and I suppose I could tighten it, but it's just a budget cube, not super good. Like $8, which is really, really nice for a stickerless magnetic 3x3, but it is one of the best budget magnetic 3x3s, so I am glad to have it in the collection. But yeah, let's move on to the next 3x3. Next up is the Thunderclap V3M from Qi, but set up by Speedcube Shop. Now, this used to be my old backup main before the RS3M, and so this is a pretty good cube, honestly. I do occasionally pick it up and solve with it, just to get a little break from my main, get a little bit of a different turning style. This one is a lot more fluid and smooth than my clacky and fast Yushin Little Magic. But yeah, I do really, really like this cube, and it is a really, really nice cube to have in the collection. Again, primary internals, just like one of the previous cubes. And yeah, so that is the Thunderclap V3M set up by Speedcube Shop. Next up, we have my first 4x4, which is in the checkerboard pattern. So that is just the same 4x4 I got in the set of 2 through 5 with that 2x2 Mofang Jiaoshi 3x3, and then of course this is the 4x4. And it turns okay. It makes kind of a weird, like, I guess that sound. I don't even know how to explain it, but it is a pretty decent 4x4, honestly, especially for so cheap. And yeah, it's fun to occasionally pick up and just reminisce in that sound, which is honestly kind of an annoying sound, but I also kind of like it for some reason. But yeah, just a budget 4x4. Next up, we are on to my old main 4x4, which is the YJ Yusu V2M. And I really, really like this cube. It is still a really fun one to use, and I do occasionally pick it up and solve it, but it is just my old magnetic 4x4. It, like, can't really corner cut that good, and it just got lockups too much for my liking, so that's why I got a new one. And it is a little bit big for my hands. I do like the 59mm of my Aosu more, but yeah, it is still a nice cube with a little bit of weak magnets, but that is not too big of a problem, and a really nice budget 4x4 with magnets. Next up, on to that final cube in the 2 through 5 set, the Meilong 5x5, and you can hear like the spring noise. You like don't hear that often anymore, but yeah, so it's just in the checkerboard pattern currently, and it is a really, really fun cube, but it is not a whole lot of good traits, but it is still a pretty decent cube, I guess, but not my favorite that I have in the collection. And next up, onto the Mofang Jiaoshi 6x6, and this cube is non-magnetic. It was my old 6x6 main before I had a magnetic one, and I don't really like it a whole lot. Like, it's kind of slow. The inner layers are like pretty slow, and then the outer layers are really fast, and it's just really uneven. But it's like a pretty decent beginner 6x6, but I honestly might recommend the Yushi and just start with that from the beginning because it will save you money in the end if you do get into 6x6. And next up we have my first ever 7x7, which was actually the cube that I got that little pie logo looking thing on for my previous profile picture. I was solving it for the first time and saw that little thing and sent a picture of it to my friend, and he thought it was pretty cool, so I decided to make that my profile picture. But I do like my current one now a little bit more, and let me know down in the comments if you do like that one too. So this also is one of my only stickered N by N cubes, so it's okay. Like, it actually turns pretty decent, but I don't really like the stickers, and I do like my current magnetic 7x7 much more. But this is a pretty decent starter 7x7. Next up we have the Mofang Jiaoshi 8x8, and this cube is actually pretty good. It's very small. I'll compare it to a 3x3 right now. It's only a little bit bigger, like just that one big piece right there. But it is quite fun to solve actually. I've been doing it a little bit more recently. I've been trying to get all of my cube records down a little bit, and I do occasionally speed solve this, and it's been a little bit hard to get good times because sometimes the layers will get misaligned like that because there are no magnets in it, because there are no magnetic 8x8s out, because they are not an official WCA event, so companies don't focus on that very much. But I do really like the Mofang Jiaoshi 8x8, so yeah. And this also used to be the biggest cube in my collection for quite some time, but it is now previously been beaten. And next up we have the Mofang Jiaoshi 9x9. And I actually really like this cube. I solve it semi-often, not a whole lot, but I do like to do it. And the problem with this cube is like its inner layers are just really slow, and it does get quite tiring when turning it occasionally. But that is basically going to be it for this cube. Nothing that special, but still a nice cube. And finally, for the N by N puzzles, we have the 10x10. Now, this is in the cubing with Jagger pattern, and it is a pattern that I just made up for my logo. It's got C, W, and J, and I didn't feel like solving the back, so I didn't, and so that is the other side of the Cubing with Jagger logo. But that is what I have as my profile picture, and I really like this cube. It's like one of my favorites. It actually turns really quite good, and I do occasionally like to solve it, though it does take a very long time. But I do like to play with this cube quite a bit, and it is a really awesome one to have in the collection. Next up, moving on to my 3x3 mods, or just mods in general, I suppose. But this is the Yan Hongi Windmill Cube, I believe. Some weird Amazon name, I'm not even sure. Maybe a Chi, maybe a YJ, something like that. But yeah, it is a pretty nice cube. I do occasionally solve it, though I would like to have a stickerless one, but it doesn't really matter, and this cube is not a great one, but it is occasionally fun to pick up and solve. And next up we have the 4x4 Windmill Cube, which is a mod by, I think, Cube Style? Maybe Cube Twist, I don't know, there's so many brands these days. But I actually really do like this cube. It is fun to solve, and I do like to solve it more than my Fisher 4x4, which is coming up. And yeah, so this is a really fun cube. I've got it in the checkerboard pattern as well. It's nice to display like this, and yeah, I really like to solve it, and it's a fun challenge. Next up, we have the Fisher Cube. Now, you may remember in my previous cube collection, I had a stickered Fisher Cube.
We have the YJ Fisher Cube, and a Fisher Cube is just a Rubik's Cube, but all the corners are cut down and added to, like, the edges. It's kind of weird. Tony Fisher originally made it, so that's why it's called the Fisher Cube. And yeah, it's a really fun puzzle. Here's a checkerboard pattern.
But I have recently traded for this stickerless one, and I like it a lot better. It's lubed much better, and it's got a much better color contrast. You can see, I just go like this. It's got really nice contrast. and I just like stickerless cubes a little bit more in general. And yeah, so that is the Fisher Cube, and I think this might be Chi, maybe Mofang Jiaoshi, YJ, something like that. Just a basic Fisher Cube. And up next is the Cube Twist Fisher 4x4, which I was talking about just earlier, and I unboxed this cube a really long time ago, and it is still really greasy, like, it gets all over my hands, and it is just not a great cube. It's not a whole lot of fun to solve either, and it's just kind of a meh cube to have in the collection, but it does look pretty cool, so I am glad to have it. Next up, we have the Calvin's Puzzle House Cube 3. So I don't have either the House Cube 1 or 2. I might get it in the future, but probably not. It's got a really weird color scheme, white opposite white, and blue opposite green and red, I guess. And like, it's just kind of weird because of the house pattern, and like yellow and white are always on the same side unless you got yellow and, or I don't know, it's a whole big mess. But it is a pretty fun puzzle to solve, not too difficult, but this center can get rotated, but it's not too hard to fix. And yeah, I do enjoy solving this puzzle, though I don't do it as much as I should, and I might get into solving this a little bit more. Next up is the Fisher Wheel of Time, which I got from my cousin for Christmas. This is a puzzle by Moyu, I believe, and it turns pretty good, and I do really like it, but I would have liked to have it in either black plastic or stickerless, because this white doesn't look that good, and this sticker has already fallen off, as well as this sticker. I think, maybe, I don't even know at this point, but it is a really cool cube to solve, though it doesn't look all that great with this white plastic, but it is still a pretty cool cube to have. Next up, we have my two least favorite puzzles in my collection, the Windmill Mirror Cube and the Fisher Mirror Cube. These just aren't fun to solve, don't get them. They're kind of a waste of money, like, you can see these lines don't line up either if you can get that to look good. They just, like, they've got orientation for all the pieces, and it's just not a fun cube to solve. Same thing with this one, so probably don't get that one, but it is an okay cube, I guess, but it's not one of my favorites. Next up, we have two little mini cubes. This is a mini Penrose cube, and this is a mini 3x3 barrel, but they are just mini cubes of their bigger counterparts, and those will be coming up soon. But I just decided to throw them in right here, and yeah, they're fun to solve. They don't turn that good since they have so small of pieces and mechanisms and stuff, but they are pretty cool to have in the collection, and I'm glad they're here. Next up, we have the 2x2 mirror cube, and I haven't actually been solving this puzzle a whole lot recently, but I do remember it being quite fun, so let's give it a solve right now. First solve of the video, I do believe. Maybe a 2x2 at the start or something, but yeah, so this cube is actually a really nice one. I do really like it, and yeah, it is a lot of fun to solve, and if you do want a nice little challenge, it is a cool one. But that is the Shangshou 2x2 mirror cube, and I actually do really like this puzzle. It's a lot of fun. Next up, we have the 3x3 mirror cube from Shangshou, and both of these came with their own stands, so when I show off my stands next, it will be pretty much all from these cubes. And yeah, I do like this puzzle too. It's not quite as much fun as the 2x2 for me, but it is a cool little puzzle and a classic design from Shangshou. Next up is the Chi 3x3 barrel cube, and I really like this puzzle. It turns so much better than my Lefun mini one, and it is a really fun puzzle to solve because you have no PLL on any of the things. There's only 3 colors. Middle layer is really easy because these can go in anywhere, but there is one little parity that you have to deal with, and centers can be rotated, but it is still a very easy puzzle, and I do enjoy solving it. Next up, another barrel cube, which I unboxed recently on the channel. I'll put that up in the corner right there, and it is a really fun puzzle. I developed my own method for it. I didn't even look at the pamphlet. What a legend, I know. but it is going to be really fun to solve if you do get it, because it's just a nice little challenge and it is a cool puzzle to solve. Next up is a Penrose cube, and it is from Z Cube, I believe. Yep, it is in the checkerboard pattern, which looks kind of weird, but I do kind of like it as well. It's just a standard 3x3 mod with 3 colors, and when it is all solved, it has these faces conjoined like this on 3 different times. It is a trihedron, I believe, also known as a Penrose cube, as I said. And yeah, it's a pretty fun puzzle and not too hard to solve, but still a cool one. Next up is a white Penrose cube, also from Z Cube. I got this as like a prize from Speed Cube Shop for ordering a certain amount of money's worth of cubes or something. But yeah, it is a pretty cool puzzle, and it is just the same as the other one, just with black, blue, and red, and on white plastic instead of blue, red, and white on black plastic. Next up, we have the Shangshao Phoenix cube. Now, this puzzle is really weirdly textured. Like, if I just catch it in the light, you can see that kind of design look right there. It just has a really weird texture, but it is pretty much just like that Chi barrel I showed earlier, with 3 different colors, but just kind of a Fisher type design. It is all a little bit weird, but still a very fun puzzle to solve, and I enjoy doing it. Up next, we have the MFJS asymmetric cube, which is basically just like one of those mirror cubes I showed earlier, but with color, and if you turn one of the sides, it doesn't actually shapeshift it or anything like that. So it is a pretty fun puzzle, and I do like to solve it, though it doesn't get used a whole lot because I have puzzles that I do enjoy a little bit more than this one, but it is still a cool puzzle to have in the collection. Up next, we have the MFJS Axis cube, and this cube is a very weird one. If you give it a checkerboard pattern, it looks completely scrambled, and I actually learned how to solve this and got one for that matter because my friend had one and I thought it was really cool, so I decided to get one for myself. This is the checkerboard pattern. You can pretty much only tell because it's got like this green, blue, green, which is opposite colors, but it is a really cool looking one, and it is a semi-hard one to solve. One of the harder 3x3 shape mods that I do have, but it is still a lot of fun to solve. Next up, we have the Moyu Axis Wheel of Time in stickerless. And this is a pretty cool cube because it's got these centers that can turn just like the Fisher version. And this one isn't stickerless, which I do really like. And it is a pretty difficult cube to solve, honestly. It is a little bit harder than the Fisher cube because on the Fisher cube one, you can use those 2 top and bottom centers, like right here, to buffer pieces because when it's completely solved, all of these white pieces are interchangeable, so they can go wherever they want to. But on this, all of these have their own place and cannot be interchanged. But it is a very cool puzzle, and it's a very fun one to have. Next up, we have the Lefun deformed 3x3 centrosphere. Now, this is a really complex sounding cube. Basically, all you have to worry about is the 3x3 in the center, which is the only thing that you really need to focus on when you solve. But these are 2x2 corners on the outside, and when you turn it, it brings that middle 3x3 along, and so it can get pretty messed up looking, but it is actually not too difficult. Next up, we have the cube style twist 3x3. Now, I actually got this cube because my friend at school had it, and it is a pretty cool one, honestly. I actually don't solve it a whole lot. I'll be honest, I kind of forgot it existed. But it is a really cool one, and I think I will get to solving this more because I really like the idea. Basically, all it is just you take one side, and then as you go up, you twist 90 degrees onto the next side, like that. And it is really cool. There have been made, I think, like 11 by 11 twist cubes, so look that up if you want to. It is pretty cool. And yeah, so that is the cube style twist cube. Next up, we have the MFJS Pandora cube. Now, whenever I get this puzzle, it always seems to have a rattle inside of it. Now, I don't know why that is, because it's like, I've already had one of these before, and I gave it to my friend for just a little bit of money, and then I bought another one, actually, because I wanted to have another one in the collection, because it's a pretty cool cube. It looks like a hard cube shape mod, but it's really just a 3x3. And yeah, so it is pretty bad, like speed cubing wise, because it's got these huge corners that come out and kind of hurt your hands when you're turning fast, but it is a pretty cool idea and I like to have it in the collection. Next up is the Chi Pentacle Cube, which is basically just a 2x2 with 3x3 spinning centers in the middle, and it is stickered right now. I wouldn't have gotten a stickerless puzzle, but it was a gift from my friend August, who keeps on seeming to be making appearances in this video. But it is a really fun puzzle, and I do like to solve it occasionally. And it is not too hard once you get your head around it, but it can be kind of confusing in the beginning. But I do really think it is a cool one. Next up, we have the Hello Cube Gear Twist. And basically what that is it's pretty much just a 2x2 gear cube, but of course, a 2x2 gear cube just turns around like that, and of course would just spin and spin and spin until it's solved. So it has the cool function of being able to pull apart like this, and you can just twist one side, and then put it back together like that, and do another side. And it is a fun cube to solve. It is kind of a weird one, honestly. But it is a really cool idea, and it is a really cool cube to solve, and yeah, I really enjoy it. Next up, we have the Hello Cube Gear 3x3, and this is basically just a standard gear cube. It's got these non-colored pieces in the center, which can just move around. And a gear cube is basically just, if you turn the outer layer 180 degrees, it moves the center 90 degrees. And it's a whole big looking challenge, but it's actually easier than a normal 3x3, which is kind of cool. And I have a tutorial out for it on my channel, which I'll put up in the corner, and I really like it. It's a fun cube to solve. Speaking of fun cubes to solve, we have the Gear Ball from Efforts. Now this is basically the same puzzle, but you can see these center pieces do have color. And if I just do a quick algorithm, RU, it moves around those pieces like this. So it does add a slight bit of solving difficulty. But I really do like this cube, and it is fun to solve, and I probably solve it the most out of all my gear cubes because it just turns so well, and you can hold it by the center and turn it like this, which is very satisfying, and I love to do it. Next up, we have the 2x2 Time Machine from Lefun. Now this cube is actually pretty interesting because it is a 2x2 in the center, and then you have to make these clocks around the outside, and it's actually pretty difficult, but it is a nice little challenge that I can normally do. And yeah, it is a pretty cool cube to have in the collection, and I enjoy solving it a lot, but it is a pretty time-consuming one, and one that is pretty impressive to solve. Next up, we have the 2x2 Ghost Cube from Limb Cube. Now, I'll show you a picture of this on screen from the Cubicle to purchase this cube, but they have so many options for different colors and like sticker patterns and all that stuff to purchase this 2x2 Ghost Cube, but it is actually a pretty cool cube to solve, so I would definitely recommend you get this puzzle if you want a nice little challenge. Now, this puzzle actually isn't that hard for me to solve. It was a little weird for me to wrap my head around it, but I thought it was going to be a okay solve when I first got it. I thought I might use it a little bit less than I actually do, but I really like this cube. It's a really fun solve, and I would definitely recommend getting it. And yeah, it's actually one of my favorite cubes in my collection. It is a lot of fun to solve, and a nice little challenge, and it's a really cool cube. Next up, we have the 3x3 Ghost Cube, and this one is from Efforts. And by the way, the reason it is called a Ghost Cube is because in order to turn it, you have to offset the layers like this. So, funnily enough, this is actually the solved position of the Ghost Cube. This is just offset to make it into a cube shape, but I can solve this puzzle. I've done it in about 7 minutes, I think is my record, and it is a really cool one, and I'm really glad to have it in the collection. And it's actually given to me by my friend Josh, which is really cool, and he's actually given me a few puzzles that I'll be showing in this video, so props to him. His channel is Josh Loves Art. He is pretty near to 50 subscribers, and it'd be really cool if you could give him a subscribe. But yeah, that is going to be it for the Efforts 3x3 Ghost Cube. Next up, on to my first ever Scube, which is, of course, the legendary Shangshao White Scube. It's really, like, sticky and kind of locky, and it is on white plastic and has a really loud ball bearing mechanism, and it's just not a very nice cube, but it was my first one, so you gotta give it something. And yeah, so it's a pretty standard cube, but yeah, that's it for the Shangshai White Cube. Next up is another cube I got from one of my friends, and that is the X-Man Wingy Scube, and this is a sub-brand of Chi, and it's a really awesome cube. It is concave, which helps with grip, and it is an awesome cube, and I really like to solve it. My record is, I think, like 5 seconds, which is probably not that great for Scube, but it is really cool. Also, if you want to check out my other friend's channel, it's just Leo Justin. He is a Lego YouTuber, as well as maybe some scooter things and interesting things like that, so definitely give him a subscribe too if you'd want to see stuff like that. So yeah, that is a really cool puzzle, and I'm thankful for him that he gave that to me. Next up, we have the MFJS Double Scube. Now, this may just look like a normal Scube with little holes in the middle, but actually, if you turn this green, red, and white corner, you can see that the center stays in place, but the corner moves around it, which adds just a really interesting solving challenge, but it is a lot of fun to solve. I'm really glad to have it in the collection, and it is a really cool cube. Next up, we have the Rex Cube and the Master Scube. Now, these are both puzzles by Lan, and I decided to put them next to each other in the video because basically the difference is this is the same piece as these two, but just these two are split and this one is connected. So it is a pretty interesting puzzle, and I do occasionally like to pick it up and solve it, but it is a little bit long, and Scube modifications, which is what these are just kind of weird for me, and I don't really like to solve them a whole lot, but they are pretty interesting puzzles, and I am glad to have them in the collection. Next up, another Lan puzzle, which is again given to me by my friend Josh. What a legend. And this is the Lan Curvy Copter, which is an edge turning puzzle, but it can also jumble like this. And it is a really interesting puzzle, and it is kind of hard to solve, but if you practice it a little bit and get used to the algorithms, it is not too bad of a solve. It is in the checkerboard pattern right now because I think that looks pretty cool. And yeah, so that is the Lan Curvy Copter. Now, this is the Chi Clover Cube, which is kind of a shape mod of the Curvy Copter. And just like the Rex Cube and the Master Cube, this is basically the same thing as this cube, which is again the Curvy Copter, and basically these pieces are just a separated version of this piece, so it is a very similar puzzle and fun to solve. And this one is in stickerless and turns much better, so I do prefer this cube over that one, but it is a really fun solve regardless. It again jumbles, shape shifts, all that good stuff. And yeah, it is a really cool cube, and I do enjoy solving it. Next up, the Meffert's Scube Extreme. What a awesome play on words. And basically all this is just a normal Scube, but these centers have orientation, and it's actually a lot easier than it looks. And it is a very cool puzzle, and I really liked solving it, and it is a very cool one. It's a lot of fun to solve. Next up, another puzzle given to me by my friend Leo. It is an awesome, really great turning puzzle. It is the Chi Ivy Cube, but the funny thing about this one is you can see right there, it is another hollow cube, because my friend somehow managed to lose all of the internals for it, and so I just put it together one day without them, and he was like, you can have it, and I was like, heck yeah, another puzzle to the collection. So that's how we got this one, and it is in the checkerboard pattern because it's gonna be on display pretty much forever, because I have another Chi Ivy Cube, which is much better than this because it actually has the internals, and it also got pencil on its stickers because it was in his backpack for like 12,000 years. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Chi Ivy Cube. Now, this is my Chi Ivy Cube. It is a lot better turning because it actually has stability, but it is just a cube pretty much, but some of the corners are hidden away right here, and it is a really, really fun puzzle, and again, I like to solve it, and it's a lot of fun. I believe it's called the Ivy Cube, if you guys didn't know, because these little leaf-looking pieces kind of look like ivy leaves, I guess. I'll look up a picture of ivy leaves and put them on screen, because I don't really even know what they look like, so yeah, that's about it. Next up, we have the Chi 6-Spot Cube, and Mofang Yi was the one who released this, which is another sub-brand of Chi, I believe, and it is a pitcher puzzle, apparently, so I guess Pitcher was one of the designers. And it is just the same thing as a Ivy Cube, but it does look a little bit different. It is the same solve though, and it is a lot of fun to solve, and I really, really like it. Next up, we have the Fisher's Cube, and this puzzle is a really, really odd one. It is another Scube modification, and it's just like a normal Scube, right? But then you offset it by 45 degrees somehow, and it becomes a Scube. It's a whole weird thing, but it is a pretty interesting cube to solve. And yeah, it is the Fisher's Cube, and I believe Nathan Wilson first built this. Next up, we have the Mofang Jiaoshi Container Cube, and yet another Scube modification, pretty much the same thing as the Fisher's Cube. And I don't solve this puzzle a whole lot. I'm not a whole big fan of Scube modifications, as I said before, but this is a pretty interesting puzzle and fun to look at, as well as occasionally solve. Next up, we have the Maple Leaf Scube, which is basically just a normal Scube, but you can see these little maple leaf looking things in the middle, and basically what you do is you turn it halfway like this, and then you can turn these around like that. They're kind of stiff, but they are still turnable, and it is a really, really cool cube, a little difficult to wrap your head around, but once you do, it is a very enjoyable solve, and I like to solve it a lot, and it is a really, really cool one. Next up, we have the MFJS Polaris Cube, and this is yet again another Scube modification, and it is also one of my favorite cubes because it is the reason I have one of my most viewed videos on my channel, actually the most viewed video on my channel, at a little under 600 views at the current time of filming, and yeah, it is a really, really cool cube. I gave a tutorial on it, so if you need to learn how to solve that, definitely use that tutorial, and it is a really, really cool one, and I enjoy solving it, and it is awesome to solve and look at. Next up, we have my Chi Square One, I do believe. It is a really, really cool puzzle to look at, but this particular Square One is not a very good one because you can see it can get caught like that, and I'll just show you right here. I'll cover it with my hand so it doesn't fly out, but it pops really, really easily. So it is not a great puzzle in that aspect, but it is a cool puzzle nonetheless, and it was my first Square One, so it does have a special place for me in the collection. Next up, we have my actual good Square One. This is the Yushin Little Magic M Square One, and it is a really, really cool one. That is just one algorithm on it. It is a really, really long one. It is the parity algorithm, and it is a really cool designed puzzle. I don't really know when it was invented or who invented it. I think sometime in the 80s actually. But yeah, that is my Square One collection. It is pretty epic. And yeah, so pretty standard Square One and nice to solve. Now, that may have been the end of my Square One collection, but this is the Calvin's Puzzle Square 2. Now, you can clearly see right away what is different about this puzzle. It has a bunch more cuts, so you can turn it like this and give it a turn like that, and it gets very, very scrambled, and I unfortunately did lose a piece right here, but it is nothing that wrecks the solve, and it turns pretty badly, but still doable. And it is a really, really interesting cube to solve, and I like to have it in the collection. Next up, we have the Dino Cube, yet again in the checkerboard pattern, because I just really like how the checkerboard pattern looks, honestly. And this is the Dino Cube from Chi, I do believe. Yep, Chi cube, and it is a really cool puzzle. It is a modification of the Ready cube, or maybe the Ready cube is a modification of that. And the Ready cube, actually, right here, is basically just this same puzzle, but it has corners right here. And this cube actually, unfortunately, got a little bit broken and lost a piece because my friend has a sister and she was playing with it and popped out a piece. And then my friend ran down to tell me, and he tripped and dropped it on the ground, and then it exploded everywhere in his yard. And we went to go find the piece that was missing, and it just wasn't there. And then, literally months later, after probably like a winter or something like that, we actually found it. It was really busted, so I didn't put it back in the cube, but it was just really interesting how that worked out. But yeah, both these puzzles are a lot of fun to solve. It is a really quick one and very cool. And I really like both these puzzles, and they are awesome additions to the collection. Now, this is basically a Ready cube, but it is a Yushin cube. It's called the Yushin 8 Petals Cube M, and basically what it is just a normal Ready cube, but it's got more curvy cuts, and of course, since it has M in the name, it is magnetic. And it turns much better. It's stickerless, which I do enjoy more, and it is not broken, which is also a plus, and it just turns a lot better. So if this were somehow a competition event and it was allowed, this would definitely be my Ready cube main, I guess. Next up is the Land Mosaic cube, or as I like to call it, the 4x4 Ready cube. And this is actually one of my favorite puzzles in my collection too, because it's a really cool solve, and I do enjoy it a lot. And yeah, so it is a really fun solve, and not too difficult, honestly, even though it does look pretty crazy when it's scrambled. But yeah, it's a really fun puzzle, and I enjoy solving it a lot. Next up, we have the Chi Ancient Coin Cube in stickerless, and this puzzle actually also has a little bit of spring noise, which again, not very common, but it is a really cool puzzle, and it is kind of hard to see the cuts because it is stickerless. But if I just kind of turn this like that, you can kind of see it's a corner turning puzzle. And again, the faces turn like that. You can see pretty good right there. And yeah, it is a really easy puzzle to solve. I do enjoy it though. And you can just kind of cycle pieces around like that. That would normally be a pretty serious parody on other cubes, but it is very easy on this cube. And yeah, I like to solve this puzzle a lot, and it's much fun. Next up, we have the Ready Cube Barrel. Now, I showed you guys the Ready cube before, and this is basically just a cylindrical version of that puzzle, and it is a lot of fun to solve, honestly, and not too hard, but it can be a little bit confusing, and these pieces can occasionally pop off, which is a little bit annoying, but it is still a very nice cube. And this is actually the solve state with these kind of weird little bands going by. And yeah, it is a pretty cool puzzle, and I enjoy solving it. Next up, another one of my most difficult puzzles in my collection. It is the Z Cube 1x2x2. So this is basically just one slice of a 2x2, and it only has 6 combinations. 100 million. So it's pretty much impossible to solve. And yeah, oh yeah, we just got news. It's actually now 10 quadrillion combinations. Yeah, so make sure to never fact check that by. Next up, we have the Z Cube Christmas tree, I believe. It's got a little thing that you can hang it on as an ornament on your Christmas tree, which is pretty cool. It doesn't do anything that exciting. It's just a really easy puzzle. It is a 1x2x3, and the position of all of these like pieces don't really matter that much. And you can pretty much just solve it by messing around and moving pieces around, even if you don't really know what you're doing. But yeah, it's a really cool puzzle, and I'm glad to have it in the collection. Next up, we have the Chi 2x2x3. Now, this puzzle is actually a lot of fun to solve. I think I can solve it in about 10 seconds. I'll scramble it up and solve while I'm talking, but it is a really cool puzzle, very easy, and if you want to get into cuboids, it's a lot of fun. And this one is by Chi Mofeng Yi, and it is a really cool puzzle. I do enjoy solving it a lot. And yeah, so it is a really easy solve. Basically all you need to do is make a single side, and then that will solve the other side already. And then if you just have this metal band solved, you can do an algorithm. and then it will solve the top and bottom, and then you can just do a quick little algorithm like that to solve the puzzle, and it is a lot of fun, and I really like to solve it. Next up, the Epic Company. Rubik's made this puzzle. You actually might not know because of the epic color scheme that we got going on. Yellow opposite green. Very, very awesome. But yeah, again, jokes aside, it is a pretty cool puzzle. It shapeshifts like crazy, and it is a really, really cool puzzle, and I like to solve it a lot, actually. But it is a really, really odd one to just show to people who don't really know what's going on, and then you can just break out like these crazy moves like that, and they'll be pretty surprised. And again, in the checkerboard pattern, and this one is a little bit of a weird checkerboard pattern, but it still looks pretty cool, and I really like to solve this one. Next up, we have the Z Cube Super Floppy Cube. Now, this puzzle is interesting because if you do a turn like this, then you can keep on turning, and it just gets all scrambled like that, and it looks pretty hard, but since you can move around such few pieces at a time, it really isn't too difficult. And so all you need to do is get all of the corners solved like this, and then you can solve this little outer band, and then basically all you need to do is a little algorithm to solve the edges, and then you might get a case that looks a little bit like this, but all you need to do is turn it up halfway like that, and you can just move this individual edge like that and move it back down, and then it's solved. So it is a really, really easy puzzle. It is a nice one to show non-cubers, and especially cubers that are just starting out, because they might be able to solve this completely on their own without looking up a tutorial, which will always be a good feeling. And yeah, so that is the Z Cube Super Floppy Cube, and it is a really cool puzzle, and I'm glad to have it in the collection. Next up, we have the Ghost Super Floppy Cube. Now, I don't know if this is actually considered the Super Floppy Cube, because basically you can not really move pieces around that good like that, and kind of feels like you're gonna break it, so definitely stick to normal moves if you do have this puzzle. But it is a really, really odd one, honestly, and I don't solve it a whole lot, but it is a really cool idea, and you can see it has 5 axes like this, and it is just really, really odd, but still a pretty cool puzzle to have in the collection. Next up, another one of my favorite cubes, and this is the Chi 3x3x2. Now, I really like this puzzle a lot because I did make up my own method for it, and also if you turn up a layer halfway like this, you can do that turn, which is a really, really odd one, and it makes some weird algorithms possible. And yeah, so I'm just scrambling it up right now, and I'll give it a quick solve. But yeah, I really like this puzzle. It is made very, very well, honestly, and I do think that it is one of my favorite puzzles in my collection. But it probably isn't my favorite one. That might have to go to the 10x10. And it's honestly just a really, really cool idea, I guess. And it is an interesting one just because, like, you can do that move, and that just makes so many different algorithms possible, which I think is a really, really cool idea type thing, I guess. Now, I've seen that only on like one other 3x3x2, and I don't know how intentional it is, because it's just like not super common, I guess, and it's just an odd one, but it is a thing. And so we'll just finish up the solve here, and that will be it for this cube. And so yeah, really, really cool puzzle, and I like to solve it a lot. Next up is one that I don't actually like to solve a lot. It actually can do that same move like this, but the weird thing about this one is you can turn the inner center like that, but actually you can't quite turn it all the way back, so you can actually do moves like that, which would be really, really cool, but not quite how it goes with this puzzle. Now, this is another Lefun cube. It is, I think, called the 3x3x2 Pi or something like that. It's a really, really weird puzzle, and it's not that great a quality, but it does look okayly cool, so I guess it's a pretty decent cube to have in the collection, but it's not one that you would definitely want to go out and get. Next up, we have the Cube for You 3x3x4. Now, this cube is interesting because it's got like some problems, but it's still pretty cool. And so like it's just so loose right now because or else it just like wouldn't turn. And it's got like little caps right here that can come off really easily, so when you're solving they might fall off. But it is a really cool idea, and it is an interesting solve. I watched a Jagger Cuber tutorial for it, and yeah, I really like this one, and I'm really glad to have it in the collection. Next up, one of the most difficult cubes in my collection, and that is of course the 1x1 Pyraminx. It is very hard. You've got to get all of the colors on the right side, and there's just so many stickers on it, and it's just really hard for me to solve it. It's scrambled right now, you can see, because yep, that's totally scrambled. But yeah, jokes aside yet again, it is a really pointless thing, pretty much, but I do like to have it in the collection, and it is a pretty cool little thing to have. Next up, we have my X-Man Bell V2M Pyraminx, and I don't even know if that's the correct name. Cube names these days are getting so long. But yeah, this is a really nice turning Pyraminx. I basically sold my old white Pyraminx to my friend Josh, yet again, Josh Piers, and yeah, so I sold it maybe a little bit way too expensive and kind of maybe cheated him a bit, but that's what friends are for, right? Yeah, so I do kind of feel a little bit bad about that, but I did get this cube, and it is a really nice one. I made up my own little method for solving a Pyraminx. Probably been done before, but I just like to call it my own. And yeah, I'm not too fast at Pyraminx because I don't really use it a whole lot, but it is a really nice cube, and I am glad to have it in the collection. Next up, we have the checkered Mofang Yi Master Pyraminx. Now, this cube I got from davidcube.com. I'll put that unboxing video up in the corner, but it is a really sketchy website, and we got our credit card hacked when we used that website. So if you want your credit card to get hacked, definitely go ahead and use it, and if not, probably stay away. But I really do like this puzzle. It is a lot of fun to solve, and it's got a really interesting method, and I pretty much solved it completely on my own. I didn't look at any tutorials, I just kind of looked at a web page for a little bit of a outline for how to solve it, and then figured it out myself. So this is one of the first puzzles I did completely by myself, and so that was pretty impressive for myself, and I really like to solve it. Next up, we have the first of my Morphix puzzles, and that is the Chi Pyramorphix, and this is a really odd puzzle. You can see it turns like this, and it's just not exactly how you'd think it would turn, I guess. But it is a really simple puzzle once you get your head around it. And it doesn't turn that great, but it does definitely get the job done. And yeah, so it's a pretty cool puzzle by Chi, and I'm glad to have it in the collection. Next up, we have the Chi Master Morphix, and this was my first Morphix puzzle, and it is really fun to solve. It is kind of hard to get your head wrapped around, but once you get it, it is not too difficult, but it is kind of hard for some beginners. It was hard for me when I first got it, and it is a really fun puzzle though, and I would definitely recommend getting it if you want to get into Morphix puzzles. Next up, the Shangshao Mega Morphix, and you can see with all Morphix puzzles, they all look very weird. Like, this is the center, here's a corner, and these two are edges, this is a corner as well. It's all kind of odd, but it is a pretty fun puzzle to solve. I have solved it not too many times because it is very difficult once you get to some parodies at the end. And yeah, it is a pretty cool puzzle though, and I'm definitely glad to have it in the collection, and I'm really glad to be able to solve it sometimes. Next up, we have the YJ Pedal Pyraminx, which I did end up actually figuring out on my own. It is a very cool puzzle, and it is in the checkerboard pattern right now. I really like this puzzle. It is a lot of fun to solve. It is basically just a Pyraminx with twisting centers in the middle, and it is a kind of odd design and a little bit of a weird thing to get your head wrapped around, but as with many of these puzzles, there seems to be a recurring theme that it is a pretty simple puzzle once you get your head wrapped around it, and yeah, it is a really, really cool puzzle, and I'm glad to have it in the collection. Next up, we have a pretty new puzzle, and this is the Clover Pyraminx from Chi. And I did figure this one out on my own as well, though it did take a very long time because this is a corner, and this is a corner, and these can get swapped, and those are really, really hard to deal with, but it is a very cool puzzle, and yet again in the checkerboard pattern, and it is a really nice turning puzzle. It turns very smoothly along the edges, and I just really like to solve it, and it's a lot of fun. Next up, the Chi Duomo, another new puzzle, which I am seeming to have a lot of these days. But yeah, so this is actually just a normal Pyraminx, but just looking a little bit different, kind of like how the Pandora Cube is just a normal 3x3, even though it kind of looks like a Cube modification. But yeah, so it is basically just a normal Pyraminx, but these kind of swaps can happen. But yeah, so it is a very, very simple puzzle, and I really like to solve it, and it is a really cool design and a lot of fun. Next up, we have yet another Chi puzzle. So basically, this is just a ancient coin cube, but as a Pyraminx, so it is called the Coin Pyraminx. And I really, really like it. It's a lot of fun to solve, and it is one of my favorite puzzles that I recently unboxed. So yeah, it is a really cool puzzle, and I'm glad to have it in the collection. Next up, yet another new puzzle is the Jing Pyraminx from Shangqiao. Now, this is the exact same puzzle as the Duomo, but just looking a little bit different. So it is a very, very simple solve, again with that little center thing at the end. But other than that, it's just the same as a Pyraminx, and I really enjoy doing it. Next up, one of my most difficult puzzles. Now this is a Ghost Pyraminx, but it is actually a Cube modification or something like that. I don't even know. It's very, very hard, and I've only solved it a few times, but I have solved it in a very quick time before, and so I don't know why I got so lucky on that one, but I did figure it out by myself, if you can consider it being figured out, because sometimes it takes me multiple hours on this one, but it is a pretty cool puzzle, and I am glad to have it in the collection, even though sometimes it really wants me to just be awake all night trying to solve it. Next up, on to the dodecahedral puzzles. This is my 1x1 Megaminx. It is very, very difficult. You can see there's so many colors, and I have no idea how to solve it. It is impossible. Never done it before. Totally haven't done it in like 0.08 seconds. So I'm gonna try to solve it right now. Let's see. 3, 2, 1, go. So you can see, as hard as I tried, it's still not solved. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but yet again, if you hadn't noticed, that was a joke. So, jokes aside, it is a pretty pointless puzzle. It was $4.50, which you could get a pretty okay 3x3 for, so probably don't buy this, but I'm pretty much addicted, so I had to get it. So yeah, that's 1x1 Megaminx. Next up, we have the Killaminx from Shangqiao. So this is in a weird pattern that I made up. So basically, it's like orange is going around like this, and so it's in kind of like a wheel pattern, and that's the same on all of the sides. I think you have to do like one corner twist to do this, but it is a pretty cool pattern. But yeah, it is a pretty interesting puzzle, and it is a fun one to solve, and it is not too difficult. So yeah, it's a nice puzzle to have in the collection. Next up, yet another puzzle that I had to take out some pieces to get into this pattern. It is the Chi Megaminx. I think this is the Chi Hang Megaminx. Now, it is a pretty okay Megaminx, but it is not that great. It's stickered, and it just like, it doesn't really react quick enough for like some finger tricks that I'm using, but it is a pretty nice starter Megaminx, which is what it was for me. So it served me pretty well, and yeah, it's in a nice checkerboard pattern right now, and it is lots of fun to solve, and it is a really cool one. Next up, yet another Minx puzzle from Shangqiao. This is the Master Killaminx. Now, it is a 4x4, basically Megaminx, and it is pretty hard to solve if you get a parity, but I don't really know how to solve the parity, so I kind of just have to mess around with some edges until I get it into a solvable state. But it is a pretty interesting puzzle, and I really like to solve it when I can, and it is a cool one to solve and a cool one to have in the collection. Next up is, I think, one of my biggest puzzles, the Gigaminx, yet again from Shangshao. Now, I think it's a bigger puzzle than my 10x10. Yep, just by a little bit. You can see it right here. But it is a really cool puzzle, and I don't really solve it that much because it just takes so long, and the puzzle kind of like doesn't like to hold its stickers, but it is still a pretty cool puzzle to solve. And yeah, so it basically is one of my favorite puzzles. It looks so cool, so big, and very powerful. I have to bow when I see this puzzle. But yeah, pretty cool puzzle, and I'd like to have it in the collection. It was a gift from my great aunt, so much thanks to her. And yeah, really awesome. Next up, we have my X-Men Galaxy V2 LM Megaminx. It is a really awesome cube, and even though it is a dodecahedron, I'm gonna still call it a cube because that's how I roll. And yeah, it's a really nice Megaminx. It's sculpted, which means it has these little things they can hold on to for grip, and it is a really nice puzzle, and I like to solve it a lot, and it really helped my Megaminx times when I got it. Next up, on to some of the more obscure Minx type puzzles. So this is the Ready Minx, which is basically just a dodecahedral of the Ready cube that I already showed you earlier in the video. And yeah, it's a really interesting solve. I first solved it out on the pontoon that we have at the house, and it is a pretty interesting puzzle, kind of weird to solve, and sometimes it'll just be really difficult and not want to get solved, but if you just try hard enough, it'll eventually get done. And I really like this puzzle because it looks really cool, and when you do one single turn, it doesn't turn that much. And so I think, if I remember right, you can do 7 different turns at once. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 actually. 8 different turns at once. So if you're a really epic Minx puzzle solver, you could probably take advantage of that, but I am not, so it's just a pretty cool collector's item, and I really like this puzzle. Next up, we have the Shangshao Phoenix Megaminx. Now, you may remember the Phoenix cube I showed you earlier, and this is just the same thing as that, but just as a dodecahedron, and it is very odd because there's so much green and just a little bit of yellow and red on the top and bottom, but it is a really nice puzzle, and I do like to solve it, but it doesn't get used a whole lot because just all this green is just so weird and confusing for me, and it's kind of an odd one, but I do like to pick it up and solve it occasionally. Next up, we have another odd puzzle. It is the Moyan 1 from Lefun. Now, this puzzle is kind of odd because it's a dodecahedron, but it is shaped kind of like a 3x3, I guess, because basically you can do like normal 3x3 algorithms like this, because like these turn, and you can do like turns like that. I was really surprised to see how it turned when I got it, but it is still a really nice puzzle, and I enjoy solving it a lot. So it is a really cool one to have in the collection. Next up, yet another cube I have gotten from Josh, or Josh Loves Art, which is his YouTube name. Make sure to subscribe. But this is a Scube Ultimate, which is a mini keychain version. Some of the stickers are kind of getting worn out, especially this light blue one, which even though it just looks white, it is a really cool puzzle, and I did figure out how to solve it on my own. Even though it may have taken 3.5 hours, it is still a pretty cool accomplishment for me. I am glad that I took the time to just try and get it. But yeah, it is a really small Scube Ultimate, and the next one I have coming up is the bigger Scube Ultimate, and this is Meffert's, so it's the last one. This one has ball bearings and just turns a lot better. I bought this from my friend Leo, yet again. If you want to subscribe to his channel, Leo Justin, I think he has 9 subscribers right now, and so it'd be really cool if you could get him to like 20, maybe 10 at least. And so yeah, so it's a really cool puzzle, and I am glad to have it in the collection. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to solve. Next up, we have the Lan 2x2 dodecahedron. Now, this is literally just a 2x2, and if you do double moves, it keeps its shape like that, but once you start doing single turns, it does shapeshift a little bit, but it is a very, very smooth solve, and so I'll just do a quick one for you here. And yeah, I actually really like this puzzle. I unboxed it semi-recently, but yeah, it is a nice one to solve, and I'm glad to have it in the collection. And so the only thing with it is this last layer can be a little bit difficult, but once you get your head wrapped around it, it is not too hard. So we'll do one more algorithm here, and that will swap two of these little corner edge type things, whatever you want to call them, and we're done. So that is the Lan 2x2 dodecahedron. It is a lot of fun to solve, and a really cool puzzle in general. Next up, we have my Ling Ao Magic, or Rubik's Magic if you want to call it that. And basically what this puzzle is it's just kind of like a folding thing that's connected with strings. Here's its solve state. All of the rings are connected. And then when you want to put it back to its normal state, all you have to do is some moves like this, and it is going to get back to all of those rings unlinked like that. So it is a really cool idea, and it was designed, I believe, in the 80s, and it is a really, really cool puzzle to mess around with, though it can get really, really confusing if you don't do the right turns. If you can even call it turns on this puzzle. And next up, we basically have that, but double, because this is the normal size of one, I do believe. Actually, it's a little bit bigger than that, but this one is colossal. Basically, what you have to do to solve this one is fold it like this, do a thing like that, fold it out, do some moves like this, make it into a little top hat, do something along the lines of that, and then you basically do the same algorithm as the thing you did before. So I'll just put it into a solved state, and so I'll show you what it looks like solved. And so basically for this puzzle, you gotta unlink all the rings, which is pretty interesting, and it's a nice little W shape when it's solved, and it is a really, really odd puzzle, and I have no idea how anyone could come up with a solution for this. But yeah, it is pretty cool, and I'm glad to have it in the collection, and it's a really, really fun puzzle. And it's back to this state. Next up, we have this little rainbow ball from YJ. And so basically what you do is you just push down these little balls onto the foam and move them under this, and they come out onto another thing. So it's basically just one hole in the middle, and normally that'd be on this side, but yet again, it is in the checkerboard pattern, which looks kind of odd on this cube, but I don't mind too much. And yeah, I got this from my friend August. I did have to buy it off of him, but it was a pretty nice deal, and I really like it, and it is a cool puzzle to solve. Next up, moving on to the Calvin's puzzle, Vlady's Seed. So I was just trying to scramble it right there and accidentally solved it, so that shows about how easy this is. It never takes more than 4 moves to solve, so right here I'll just do some moves a little bit like this, and that was 3 moves and it is solved, so that is pretty cool. And yeah, it is a really, really easy puzzle and a fun cube to have in the collection, but its evil friend, Vlady's Evil Seed, is like this, so you can basically turn it halfway through the middle like that, as well as the normal turns like this. But unlike in my unboxing, which I didn't see any other moves, you can do a move like this, where you only turn it halfway, and you can still do a turn like that, and so that is pretty interesting. I have developed my own method for this. It is pretty interesting though, and I really do like to solve it. It is a pretty nice cube, and I'll put the unboxing of that up in the corner. And yeah, so that is a really, really cool puzzle, and I do like to solve it. Next up, we've got the Ling Ao clock. And so the clock puzzle is a very odd one. You can see if you have all of these little pins up, it moves all of these on this side, but on the other side, it moves only these little corner things. So it's a very odd puzzle, but it's really not too difficult to solve. I did have to watch a tutorial for it though, because I wasn't quite getting it. But yeah, it's a really interesting puzzle. I think it was developed sometime before the 2000s, so it's a pretty old puzzle, but it is a really cool one nonetheless. Next up, we have the snake puzzle. I think this is the Chi mini snake. I'm not quite sure though. It is a really interesting puzzle. So basically what you have to do is make it into a little ball. And my dad was actually the one who taught me how to do this. So I think they were around when he was a kid. So that was pretty cool. And so I'll just give it a quick solve here. And it is very, very interesting. And I do like to solve it, but it is not too hard. Though the turning, I guess if you can call it that, isn't that good. But it is still a cool one to have in the collection, and basically you just keep repeating this sequence of moves that I'm doing, and that will solve the cube, or the snake, I guess. So I'll just try to get it to go. There we are. And you can turn it like this, and then once more like that, and do a quick turn over, and it's into a little ball. So you can make all kinds of shapes with this cube, and so it's a really, really nice one, and I do like to mess around with it. You can make all kinds of different ones. But yeah, so that's the Chi mini snake, and it is a very odd but interesting puzzle to have in the collection. And finally, I think I forgot to mention this and had to put a little thing at the end in my last cube collection. It is the Rubik's pen, and it's basically just, you can turn these things, and then you can slide these up and down. There's a little space in the middle, and then you can do a turn and slide it back down. It is a very easy puzzle, but it can be a little bit odd. But I think that's gonna do it for this cube collection, but I do have some accessories to show you. So this is going to be my YJ pocket timer. It is my little timer that I can carry around with me, and so basically what you do is you just press that button. You can put your hands down, you can pick them up, and it's kind of finicky. It's hard to do, especially with this hot light that's next to me, because it uses these infrared sensors right here and here to sense your hands, so that's why it can be so small. But it is a pretty cool timer, and it is a fun thing to play around with. Next up, we have all of my lubes. So this is some Cube Collab silk. This kind of came all like busted and like open when I got it, so that was kind of annoying. This is the Solaritas lube, a 2-part solution, which is pretty cool. This is some Mystic lube, which they used on my 4x4 over at the Cubicle, and this is some classic DNM 37 from Cube Collabs, and I really like this one. I use it all the time. It makes my puzzles extra fast, and yeah, so that's all of the lubes I have. And finally, taking you guys down here to my kind of random type shelf. These are all of my cube stands. We've got some D-Fantix ones from Amazon, the Cubicle.us, the Cubicle.us, and a Moe stand. Then back here, you can see kind of all of my little cards and pamphlets and stuff I got from all of my cubes and unboxings. And that is, I think, going to do it. Apart from all of my boxes, I've kind of turned into a box collector. I'll show you right here. I've got even more on the back. So it is a really, really cool collection in my opinion. And yeah, it's a really, really fun thing to have as a hobby. So that is going to be it for the cube collection. It's been a really long video. It's been so appreciated if you guys stayed all the way through. That's very, very cool of all you guys, and I really, really appreciate it. But I'll show you all of my cubes sitting on the shelf before we go. So here they are. There's all the boxes. Kind of got to lean back a little bit to get them all in frame. Those little cards that you can see are just how many cubes I have on each shelf. I think I have 120 cubes in total, which is absolutely insane. And so there's that shelf, and of course those two bottom shelves. Very, very cool. But you guys may have been wondering, what is the special announcement you have? Now, I actually have two. So you guys may have been wondering why I had so many of these cubes checkered, and although it does look very cool, it is actually because for my 100 subscriber special, I'm going to be checkering all of my Rubik's Cubes, which is going to be a huge task. So if you guys did watch to the end of the video, that is a little sneak peek for you guys. So that is very, very cool. And finally, the most important one. Are you ready for it? 3, 2, 1. It's a cat. My cat is very, very sleepy right now. He likes to sit on my bed while I film. He is a nice little cat, and he needs to be active for the video, but he won't be because he's a cat, and cats don't listen, so he'll sign it off for you guys. He does not want to look at me. Anyway, he'd really like it if you'd subscribe. That'd be really, really cool. Like the video, comment, all that good stuff. You guys know what to do. Anyway, don't twist me in corners while I'm away. Bye. That was really dumb. Anyway, see you guys in the next video.